Get out of that seat before I call security. Catherine Whitmore's voice sliced through the hushed luxury of Pinnacle Airways, Flight 1847. Every head in the first-class cabin turned. Standing in the aisle, Marcus Reed held out his boarding pass, Seat 2A, printed in bold black ink. Catherine didn't even glance at it. Her diamond bracelet caught the light as she waved him off like a servant who'd overstayed his welcome. You don't look like you belong here, she added, loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. A ripple of uneasy laughter traveled through the rows. What nobody knew, not Catherine, not the flight attendants, not even the captain, was that Marcus Reed wasn't just a passenger tonight. He owned the airline. And in less than 10 minutes, this flight would become the center of a storm that shook the entire nation. Marcus Reed had never liked airports. Not because of the endless lines or the fluorescent lighting that made everyone look exhausted, but because of the subtle theater of suspicion that seemed to follow him through every checkpoint. A black man in his mid-30s, tall and broad-shouldered, with a face that carried both youth and authority. Marcus had long ago learned to move through terminals like a soldier on patrol, alert, measured, and prepared for the unspoken assumptions that shadowed him everywhere. He dressed simply that morning, a black hoodie that looked ordinary but was made from imported fabric, dark jeans pressed clean, and a pair of sneakers worth more than most people's monthly rent. He chose comfort, but comfort always came with a price. 3 days in New York had left him drained. Back-to-back investor meetings, each one a performance where he had to prove, again, that Skylink Technologies wasn't just a miracle startup, but a revolution in global infrastructure. He had pitched to boardrooms filled with billion-dollar portfolios and cautious men who smiled politely while scanning him like a curiosity. They nodded at his graphs, praised his projections, then tested him with questions they never would have asked if his skin had been lighter. Marcus had answered everyone. He had closed deals, shaken hands, and left behind rooms that buzzed with the uneasy recognition that the man they had underestimated was about to reshape their industry. Now, dragging his carry-on through the glossy expanse of JFK's Terminal 7, Marcus thought only of silence. Miami waited, warm air, his condo overlooking Biscayne Bay, and a weekend where his phone could rest face down on the counter, but silence was still a distant dream. Jason Miller, his 26-year-old assistant, jogged to keep up with him. Jason's tailored jacket was rumpled, his tie pulled loose after nights with too little sleep. He carried 2 phones, a tablet, and a look of perpetual urgency. Board meeting moved to 2 p.m. Pacific, Jason said, skimming through a flood of notifications. That gives us barely 4 hours on the ground before you're back in front of a camera. CNBC already called. They want an exclusive. CNN is asking too. Social's going insane with your interview from yesterday. Marcus grunted, not slowing his pace. And the investors? They're impressed, Jason replied. Too impressed. Half of them think you're about to buy another airline. The other half think you're running for president. Either way, they're calling nonstop. The comment made Marcus smile faintly. People always assumed power had to expand endlessly. They couldn't imagine someone building an empire simply to protect the dignity that had been denied him all his life. Security at JFK was its usual chaos. A river of travelers funneled toward the scanners, shoes in bins, laptops half forgotten, agents barking instructions over the clatter of rolling suitcases. Marcus stepped into line with practiced calm. He handed over his ID without comment, endured the agent's lingering glance, and passed through the scanner with his arms raised like a suspect in a crime he hadn't committed. He retrieved his bag, slipped his watch back on, a Felipe chronograph he had gifted himself after Skylink's IPO, and waited as Jason cleared behind him. The gate area for Pinnacle Airways Flight 1847 looked like every other first-class departure lounge. Leather chairs arranged in clusters, power outlets scattered like bait, and a bar where travelers pretended cocktails at 10 a.m. were normal. Marcus sat by the window, watching the silver fuselage of the aircraft being serviced outside. Fuel trucks hissed, luggage carts beeped, and mechanics in reflective vests moved like ants around a hive. He knew the process intimately. Skylink software managed half the logistics on that tarmac. Every bag scanned, every flight logged, every passenger registered. They all ran through his code. Jason was still scrolling furiously. "You sure you don't want to fly private today? We could have arranged a jet out of Teterboro. Avoid all this." "No," Marcus said simply. "Private flights don't prove a point. Commercial travel keeps me visible. Reminds me who I'm fighting for." Jason sighed, but he knew better than to argue. Boarding was called soon after. First-class passengers, Pinnacle Airways, Flight 1847 to Miami. Please proceed. Marcus rose, slung his backpack over one shoulder, and moved with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged, though he knew belonging was always conditional. The gate agent scanned his pass, her smile professional but thin. She didn't recognize him, and that was fine. He preferred it that way. But there was always that flicker, that hesitation when she glanced at the name on the screen. Marcus Reed, Pinnacle Platinum. The flicker said, "Really?" And then it vanished behind customer service polish. The jet bridge smelled of industrial carpet and recycled air. Marcus stepped into the cabin, where first class already hummed with whispered conversations and the muted clink of glasses. Leather seats gleamed under soft lighting, and the faint scent of expensive perfume drifted from a woman already settled near the window. Catherine Whitmore, blonde hair styled perfectly, diamond earrings catching the glow, designer handbag occupying half the seat beside her. She was absorbed in her phone, scrolling through listings of penthouses in Manhattan and Hamptons estates, her manicured nails tapping like a metronome of privilege. Marcus barely glanced at her. He looked up, found seat 2A printed clearly above, and stepped forward. His boarding pass was still in his hand, slightly creased from the rush through security. He was bone-tired, but a seat by the window, a glass of water, and 30 minutes of silence before takeoff, that was all he wanted. What he got instead was Catherine Whitmore's laugh. Sharp, dismissive, the sound of someone who had never been told no. "You must be mistaken," as she said, her voice smooth but dripping with condescension. "This is my seat. Why don't you find another?" For a heartbeat, Marcus thought he had misheard, but the way she waved her hand toward the aisle, like brushing away an inconvenience, told him exactly what kind of game this was. He kept his tone calm. "Ma'am, this is seat 2A. It's printed on my boarding pass." Catherine finally looked up. Her eyes swept over him, hoodie, jeans, sneakers, and narrowed with disbelief. She gestured toward her handbag and the shopping bags at her feet. "I've already settled in. I'm Pinnacle Platinum. 12 years running. Surely you can find something more appropriate." That word, appropriate, Marcus felt it land like a stone. He had heard it in boardrooms, at Harvard, in every negotiation where his presence was treated as an anomaly. Appropriate was the polite word people used when they meant you don't belong. The cabin grew quiet. Passengers glanced up from their phones, curiosity flickering. The flight attendants exchanged subtle looks, calculating how quickly they might need to intervene. Marcus stayed rooted in the aisle, boarding pass in hand, exhaustion in his bones, and something colder rising in his chest. This was not going to be one of those times when he quietly stepped aside to keep the peace. Not today. He shifted his weight slightly, meeting Catherine's icy stare with one of his own. He could feel the tension tighten around him, like cabin pressure before a storm. A businessman in 2C pretended to adjust his tie but was clearly eavesdropping. A young couple across the aisle whispered to each other, the woman's expression tense, the man's curious. 2 rows back, an older black couple exchanged a glance that said they had seen this play out too many times before. Catherine, sensing the eyes upon her, straightened her posture and lifted her chin. "I've flown Pinnacle for over a decade," she said loudly enough for the nearby rows to hear. Never once has there been this kind of mix-up. If there's a mistake, it isn't mine. Marcus could feel his pulse steady, not race. He had trained himself for this. Moments when power disguised itself as civility, when prejudice wrapped itself in procedure. He inhaled, slow and controlled, as if he were about to walk into a negotiation worth billions. Because in a way, he was. Mrs. Whitmore, Marcus said evenly, all I'm asking is that you check your boarding pass. We'll clear this up immediately. The woman's lips curved into a smile that was neither kind nor amused. Sweetheart, I don't need to check anything. I know where I'm supposed to be. Do you? The passengers who had been pretending not to watch were now openly staring. Phones remained tucked away for now, but eyes tracked every movement, every word. The air itself seemed charged, as if the aircraft's engines were already humming, though they hadn't even pushed back from the gate. Marcus glanced briefly at his watch. It wasn't impatience. It was ritual, a way of centering himself. The Philippe timepiece, hidden beneath his sleeve, had ticked with him through countless battles for respect, for acknowledgement, for space in rooms that were never built with him in mind. It ticked now as he held his ground. Catherine leaned back slightly, triumphant in her refusal. You look exhausted, she said with mock sympathy. Maybe they can find you something in business class. More comfortable for you. Marcus tilted his head, studying her as though she were a case study, an example of entitlement under glass. He recognized the strategy. Establish dominance. Force him to yield. Remind everyone watching that hierarchy was not about fairness, but familiarity. Comfort, Marcus murmured, isn't about location. It's about dignity. The businessman in 2C coughed, awkwardly adjusting his newspaper. The young couple across the aisle looked visibly unsettled. The older black couple sat very still, their silence heavy with recognition. Catherine's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second. Then she pressed her advantage, raising her voice so it carried even to the back of the cabin. Flight attendant, could we have some assistance here? This man is confused about his seat. The soft chime of a call button pierced the thickening silence. Somewhere, a phone screen lit up, angled just enough to suggest someone had decided this was worth recording. And with that, the stage was set. The soft chime still echoed in the air when the aisle filled with the practiced footsteps of a flight attendant. Emily Tran emerged from the galley, her navy uniform pressed sharp, her dark hair pulled into a neat bun. She wore the kind of smile that airlines trained into their crews, warm but firm, a shield against chaos. Yet even before she reached row 2, she could feel the energy vibrating in the cabin. Dozens of eyes flicked toward her, then back to Marcus Reed and Catherine Whitmore, as if the entire first-class section were holding its breath. Good afternoon, Emily began, her voice pitched perfectly for de-escalation. I understand we have some confusion about seating. Catherine immediately leaned forward, every inch the aggrieved victim. Yes, thank you for coming so quickly. I'm Catherine Whitmore, Pinnacle Platinum for 12 years. I've been sitting here in 2A, which I specifically requested, and this gentleman insists it's his. Emily's eyes flicked to Marcus. He offered his boarding pass silently, his expression calm but unyielding. She took it, scanning the details with the speed of someone who had done this 100 times. Flight 1847. Seat 2A. Passenger, Marcus Reed. There was no ambiguity. The pass was valid. Her professional smile tightened by half a degree. She glanced at the illuminated placard above the seat, 2A glowing clear in the soft light, then back at Catherine's carefully arranged handbag and shopping bags sprawled across the space. Mrs. Whitmore, Emily said cautiously, according to this boarding pass, 2A is assigned to Mr. Reed. The words should have settled it. They did not. Catherine's laugh sliced through the cabin, brittle and sharp. Well, obviously there's been a mistake. I booked this seat weeks ago. I don't know how your system screwed it up, but I am not moving. Emily's training told her to soothe, to redirect, to make the problem disappear before it grew teeth. Mrs. Whitmore, I understand your frustration. These things happen from time to time. Perhaps, perhaps, Catherine cut in, you can find this man another seat, something equally nice. I've already settled in. It would be ridiculous to make me move at this point. The businessman in 2C shifted uncomfortably. The young couple across the aisle exchanged uneasy glances. 2 rows back, the older black couple sat very still, their silence loaded with recognition. And just beyond them, a young woman with a press badge clipped to her blazer angled her phone discreetly, thumbs moving quickly. Her nameplate read, Maria Alvarez, Washington Post. Emily turned back to Marcus, her voice softening. Mr. Reed, I do apologize for the inconvenience. We do have other excellent seats available in first class. 3C, for example. It's an aisle with great legroom. We'd be happy to move you there and make sure you receive priority service for the rest of the flight. Marcus's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level. The inconvenience, he said slowly, isn't that there's no seat. It's that someone else is sitting in mine. The one I paid for. The one assigned to me. A ripple of tension ran through the cabin. Catherine sensed it, leaned back smugly, and folded her arms. See? He's making a scene. I told you. Emily pressed her lips together. She'd handled drunks, entitled executives, families fighting over carry-ons. But this was different. The silence in the cabin wasn't just discomfort, it was scrutiny. A dozen passengers were watching, evaluating whether fairness would be enforced or compromised. Mr. Reed, Emily tried again. Sometimes flexibility helps everyone. Mrs. Whitmore is a valued platinum member. I assure you, Pinnacle Airways appreciates your business as well, but perhaps just this once. And I'm not valued? Marcus asked quietly. The question stopped Emily mid-sentence. For the first time, she looked directly into his eyes. What she saw there made her hesitate, exhaustion laced with steel. The weight of too many moments like this compressed into one. Catherine, emboldened by the pause, leaned forward. Exactly. He's hoping to stir up trouble, maybe angle for some kind of compensation. I've seen this act before. The phrase hit Marcus like a blow. Compensation. The old stereotype dressed up as practicality. The idea that any black man in a seat of privilege must be running a con. He exhaled slowly, forcing his tone to stay calm. Mrs. Whitmore, the only thing I'm asking is to sit in the seat assigned to me. Nothing more, nothing less. Phones shifted in hands now. A teenager in row 5 angled his device just enough to capture video. Across the aisle, Maria Alvarez raised her eyes from her notepad, her gaze sharp. She knew a story when it unfolded in front of her. Emily, sensing the limits of her authority, straightened. Perhaps it's best if I involve the captain. He'll have the final word on this matter. Yes, please do, Catherine said instantly, her tone triumphant. Bring someone with real authority. Marcus didn't flinch. He simply nodded. I think that's an excellent idea. Emily disappeared down the aisle, the weight of the cabin pressing in her wake. For a long moment, silence ruled. The engines outside thrummed faintly, the hum of a giant waiting to move. Inside, and the passengers watched, eyes darting between Marcus and Catherine as though waiting for a verdict. Catherine broke the silence first. She crossed her legs, smoothed her skirt, and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. You know, real first-class passengers don't dress like they're headed to the gym. It's about respect for the space, for the people around you. A gasp came from somewhere behind. The older black man in row 4 shifted, his wife placing a calming hand on his arm. The teenager's phone angled higher. Maria Alvarez's pen moved furiously across her notepad. Marcus stood still, boarding pass in hand, his voice low but carrying. Respect, he repeated. That's exactly what this is about. The cabin seemed to tighten around the words. Then came the sound. Firm footsteps down the aisle, slower, heavier, imbued with authority. A figure appeared at the curtain, Captain Daniel O'Connor, silver hair at his temples, uniform crisp, posture straight with decades of command. His face was lined by years of sky and responsibility. "Good afternoon," he said, his baritone steady but sharp. "I understand we have a seating issue here." Every head turned. Emily hovered just behind him, her professional mask cracking with unease. Catherine straightened instantly, a smile snapping onto her face like armor. She extended her hand. "Captain O'Connor, thank you for coming. I'm Catherine Whitmore, Pinnacle Platinum for over a decade. There's been a mistake with the seating assignment, and this man is refusing to be reasonable." Marcus didn't move, didn't speak, just held out his boarding pass to the captain. O'Connor took it, scanning the details. His brows furrowed. He looked at the placard above Catherine's head, 2A glowing clear, and then back at the boarding pass in his hand. Silence pressed in like altitude. "Well," O'Connor said slowly, "this seat is indeed assigned to Mr. Reed." Catherine's smile didn't falter. If anything, it sharpened. "Captain, surely you understand I've already settled. I specifically requested this seat for medical reasons. Window on the left side helps with motion sickness. I can't be moved." Marcus studied her, noting the shift. First status, then entitlement. Now a fabricated medical excuse. He'd seen this play before. The script changed, but the goal remained the same. Keep the black man standing. Keep him displaced. Keep him less than... O'Connor cleared his throat. "Mr. Reed, we do have other available seats in first class. Perhaps, for the sake of expediency." The words landed like a verdict, not fairness. Expediency. The older black woman in row 4 closed her eyes briefly, as if bracing against a blow she'd expected. Maria Alvarez's pen didn't stop moving. The teenager's phone streamed silently, his eyes wide with the sense that history was happening at 30,000 feet before takeoff. Marcus Reed inhaled slowly, then exhaled, his voice quiet but resolute. "Captain, with respect, no, I won't move." And with that, the confrontation shifted from a dispute over a seat to a battle over dignity itself. Captain Daniel O'Connor stood in the aisle like a judge presiding over a courtroom. His presence should have been calming, but the weight of his authority only made the cabin feel tighter, as though oxygen itself had been rationed. The silence that followed Marcus's refusal to move was electric. Dozens of eyes tracked every flicker of expression on the captain's weathered face. "Mr. Reed," O'Connor said at last, his tone carefully measured, "I understand this seat is listed under your name, but Mrs. Whitmore is a valued Pinnacle Platinum member. In these situations, sometimes flexibility is the best path forward." Flexibility. The word struck Marcus like déjà vu. Always the same. At Harvard, when classmates accidentally excluded him from study groups. In boardrooms when he was told to be patient while lesser men were promoted. Flexibility was code for swallow the insult, make yourself smaller, let someone else be comfortable at your expense. His voice stayed calm, but it carried. "Captain, let me ask you something. If I were already sitting in this seat and Mrs. Whitmore came in with her boarding pass for 2A, would you ask her to move?" The captain's jaw worked, but no words came. Passengers leaned in, hungry for the answer. "That's what I thought," Marcus said softly. Catherine scoffed, tossing her hair back. "This is absurd. He's trying to turn a simple mix-up into some kind of moral crusade. I know exactly what this is about. Compensation. He's hoping for free upgrades, miles, maybe even a payout. It's a scam. I've seen it before." The accusation slammed into Marcus like a slap. His eyes hardened. Around them, passengers shifted uncomfortably. An audible gasp escaped from the older black woman in row 4. The teenager's phone camera tilted higher. "Compensation?" Marcus repeated, his voice quiet but dangerous. "Mrs. Whitmore, the only thing I want is to sit in the seat I paid for. Nothing more. Nothing less." Emily Tran, still hovering behind the captain, looked like she wanted to sink into the carpet. Her training manuals had never covered this, the collision of entitlement, prejudice, and truth in front of a dozen witnesses armed with cameras. Then Catherine said the words that detonated the cabin. "You people are unbelievable." The phrase landed like a thunderclap. Several passengers audibly gasped. Maria Alvarez, the Washington Post correspondent, snapped her head up, her pen scratching furiously. The teenager's live stream count ticked past 700, comments flooding in with outrage. Marcus felt something inside him crystallize. Not rage, something colder, sharper, the clarity of a man who had endured enough. "You people," he repeated slowly, his voice carrying through the hushed cabin. "Thank you for making your position perfectly clear." Catherine flushed crimson, suddenly realizing the trap she had sprung for herself. "That's not what I meant." But the words were too late. The passengers had heard. The cameras had captured it. The story was already alive. Maria Alvarez rose from her seat, her press badge visible against her blazer. "Captain O'Connor," she said loudly. "Maria Alvarez, Washington Post. What I'm witnessing here is a black passenger with a legitimate boarding pass being asked to give up his seat for a white passenger who has no claim to it. If that's Pinnacle Airways policy, I'd like you to state it on the record." The captain stiffened, color draining from his face. "This is a customer service issue. Ma'am, we're simply trying to resolve it." "Comfortable for whom?" Maria pressed. "For the woman who refuses to move? Or for the man you're asking to give up his rights?" The tension ratcheted higher. Passengers who had tried to remain neutral were now openly staring, some whispering, others holding up phones. One of them, a young Asian student named Lily Park, muttered, "Screw it," and lifted her phone higher. "I've been live streaming this since the start," she announced. "There are nearly 1,000 people watching right now, and they're not buying what you're selling." Annie Catherine whirled on her. "You can't record me without my consent." "It's a public space," Lily shot back, steadying her phone. "And it looks a lot like a civil rights violation." The hashtag was born in real time. Viewers typed it into the comments. "Frickin' Flight 1847, Chaka Pinnacle shame." Marcus stood in the aisle, calm but radiating authority. He turned to Catherine. "You've accused me of running a scheme, suggested I don't belong here, used the phrase you people. Tell me, Mrs. Whitmore, what exactly about my existence in this seat threatens you so much?" She sputtered, words failing her for once. The captain raised a hand, desperate to regain control. "Enough. I'll make the final call here. Mr. Reed, I'm asking you one last time. Please take another seat so we can depart on time." Marcus's next words chilled the air. "No. In fact, Captain, I'm ordering you to ground this flight immediately." Gasps rippled through the cabin. Catherine laughed, high and shrill. "Oh, this is rich. Now he thinks he's in charge. Captain, arrest him if you have to." But Marcus was already reaching into his pocket. He pulled out his phone, unlocked it with a swipe, and tapped into an app none of the passengers recognized. Its sleek interface glowed with the Pinnacle Airways logo. Lines of operational data scrolling beneath. "What are you doing?" Emily whispered, eyes widening. Marcus's finger hovered over a button labeled CEO Override. "Ground all flights." "This," he said calmly, "is what happens when someone pushes a CEO too far." He tapped. The app processed, then flashed a message. "Flight 1847, grounded by owner directive. Return to gate immediately." Almost instantly, The captain's radio crackled to life. Flight 1847, this is Tower Control. We're showing a CEO override on your aircraft. Confirm status and return to gate. The captain's mouth fell open. Tower, say again? CEO override. Affirmative. Order came directly from Skylink Innovations Corporate. You are cleared to return to gate C7 immediately. Every passenger in the cabin froze. Catherine's face drained of color. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. Lily's live stream comments exploded. Viewer counts skyrocketing into the thousands. Marcus slipped his phone back into his pocket and looked Catherine directly in the eye. Allow me to introduce myself properly. Marcus Reed, CEO of Skylink Technologies, majority owner of Pinnacle Airways. Silence. Total. Stunned silence. Maria Alvarez's pen stopped mid-stroke. Then she whispered, almost reverently, "Holy hell! You... what?" Catherine stammered, her voice a broken whisper. "I don't just have a ticket on this plane," Marcus said. "I own this plane. I own 65% of this airline. Every seat, every system, every uniform. You're standing in my house. Mrs. Whitmore." The weight of the revelation settled over the cabin like a storm cloud. The passengers who had doubted him, judged him, dismissed him, now they stared with wide eyes, caught between shock and awe. The teenager muttered, "Dude just Uno reversed the whole flight." His live stream chat exploded in laughing emojis and fire icons. Catherine, trembling now, tried to salvage ground. I didn't know who you were." "If I had known," Marcus's eyes hardened. "That's exactly the problem. You shouldn't have to know who I am to treat me with basic respect." The engines outside roared down to idle as the aircraft turned back toward the gate. A murmur spread through the cabin, the realization dawning that they weren't flying anywhere soon. Maria Alvarez tucked her notepad into her blazer. "Mr. Reed, this is going to be front page by morning. May I quote you?" Marcus nodded once. "Quote this: discrimination ends today. On my airline. It ends today." The cabin erupted, not in applause, but in the buzz of history being written in real time. Phones recorded, viewers shared, hashtags trended, and in the center of it all stood Marcus Reed, no longer just a passenger denied his seat, but the man who had grounded his own airline to prove a point. The storm had broken, and nothing in aviation or civil rights would ever be the same again. The aircraft rolled back toward Gate C7 with the engines throttled low, the cabin thick with stunned silence. First-class passengers sat frozen, some gripping armrests, others whispering to one another, the weight of what had just happened pressing into every breath. Phones buzzed nonstop, notifications pinged like hail on a tin roof. Lily Park's live stream had surged past 5,000 viewers and was climbing faster than the plane was moving. Maria Alvarez's pen scratched furiously across her notebook, capturing every detail for a story she knew could define her career. Captain O'Connor's voice came over the intercom, strained but steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to an operational directive from Pinnacle Airways Corporate, we will be returning to the gate. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." The subtext was clear. This wasn't mechanical. This wasn't weather. This was unprecedented. A passenger, a black man in a hoodie, had just grounded an aircraft before takeoff. Catherine Whitmore sat rigid, her face pale. Mascara streaked faintly under her eyes. Her diamond bracelet glinted under the cabin lights, a mocking reminder of the power she thought she held. She clutched her handbag like a shield, but no shield could stop the reality that every eye in the cabin had turned against her. Marcus Reed leaned against the headrest of his seat, finally settled in 2A, the seat that had ignited the firestorm. He looked composed, but beneath the calm, his mind raced like an engine at full throttle. Decisions were stacking faster than he could process. He had just turned a personal insult into a public declaration of war against systemic discrimination. There would be no going back. The jet bridge thudded into place. The cabin door opened with a hiss. On the other side, A cluster of uniformed security officers, airport officials, and, impossibly, air reporters waited. News traveled at light speed. Word of the CEO override had spread through the terminal before the plane even touched the gate. Passengers began deplaning under watchful eyes. Some hurried off, eager to escape the chaos. Others lingered, whispering, their phones raised to capture the moment. The older black couple from row 4 walked past Marcus slowly, the man offering a subtle nod of solidarity. About time somebody stood their ground, he murmured. His wife squeezed Marcus's hand briefly before moving on. Catherine tried to blend into the flow of passengers, but whispers followed her like a trail of smoke. Lily Park's camera tracked her exit, and the live stream chat erupted. There she is. That's her, the racist lady. Catherine's once impenetrable aura of privilege had cracked wide open, exposed to a world that was watching in real time. Maria Alvarez stayed behind, scribbling notes, then slipping her phone to her ear. It's Alvarez. I'm on flight 1847. Yes, that flight. Get me a full page. This is civil rights history in the making. At the gate, the scene was chaos. Security formed a perimeter as reporters shouted questions. Flashes burst, and microphones thrust forward. Mr. Reed, did you really ground your own airline? Is this about race? What message are you sending to Pinnacle Airways customers? Jason Miller, Marcus's young assistant, was already there. Suit wrinkled, tablet under one arm, phone pressed to his ear. When he spotted Marcus, relief flooded his face. Thank God. Do you realize what's happening out here? Your Pinnacle shame is trending worldwide. CNN, MSNBC, even BBC, they're all calling. Investors are panicking. Pinnacle stock is dropping, but Skylink shares are spiking. You're a hero and a villain at the same time. Marcus absorbed it without blinking. Status report, he said. Jason scrolled furiously. We've got two narratives forming. One, you're the black CEO who stood up to racism at 30,000 feet. Two, you're a reckless executive abusing corporate power. Both are spreading fast. The board has called an emergency meeting in 2 hours. They want answers. Before Marcus could respond, a woman in a sharp navy suit pushed through the crowd. Her badge read, Rebecca Santos, VP of Operations, Pinnacle Airways. Her expression was a careful mask of authority stretched thin over panic. Mr. Reed, she said, her voice crisp but tense. I need to speak with you immediately regarding this incident. Marcus studied her, then nodded. Let's talk. They stepped aside into a quieter alcove, though microphones still hovered within range, reporters leaning like vultures. Rebecca clasped her hands tightly. Sir, Pinnacle Airways takes all allegations of discrimination very seriously. We intend to launch a full investigation into the events of Flight 1847. In the meantime, I'd ask that we handle this internally, through proper channels. Marcus's laugh was short, sharp. Proper channels? You mean the same channels that bury complaints in a file until they're forgotten? The ones that issue empty apologies and send employees to diversity seminars while nothing changes? Rebecca flushed, her mask slipping. With respect, Mr. Reed, our procedures, your procedures, Marcus cut in, asked me, the rightful passenger, to move out of my seat to protect the comfort of a white woman who didn't belong there. Your procedures backed her entitlement over my dignity. And your procedures almost allowed this airline to endorse racism as policy. Don't talk to me about procedures, Jason murmured. It's all over TikTok already. Lily's stream hit 1 million views in under an hour. CNN's calling it the flight that stopped racism at 30,000 feet. Rebecca's composure cracked further. Sir, I understand you're upset, but public statements could escalate this into a crisis we can't control. Thousands of jobs are at stake. The FFCI, Marcus stepped closer, his voice low but razor sharp. This isn't a crisis. This is a reckoning. And the only people who should be afraid are the ones who think jobs depend on protecting discrimination. Maria Alvarez appeared at his elbow, notebook open, phone recording. Mr. Reed, on the record, are you calling this incident discrimination, not just a customer service mistake? Marcus looked her dead in the eye. On the record, what happened on Flight 1847 was racial discrimination, plain and simple, and it ends today. Not just here, not just with Pinnacle, everywhere. Flashes exploded. The words shot across the internet before they left his mouth. Headlines formed in real time. CEO calls out airline racism. Flight 1847 sparks civil rights firestorm. Rebecca's phone buzzed violently. She glanced down, her face blanching. The board chair wants to speak with you immediately. Tell him he'll get his answers at the emergency meeting, Marcus said. And tell him to clear his schedule, because Pinnacle Airways is about to change forever. The gate area buzzed like a hive. Passengers from Flight 1847 gave interviews on the spot. The older black couple spoke with quiet dignity about what they'd witnessed. Lily Park live-streamed to tens of thousands, narrating the events with raw authenticity. Catherine Whitmore tried to slip through unnoticed, but reporters swarmed her, microphones shoved in her face. Mrs. Whitmore, do you regret your words? Did you really say, you people? Her denial sounded hollow, drowned out by the roar of social media. Jason tugged Marcus's arm urgently. We need to move. Every outlet wants a statement. The board is already spooked. Investors are demanding clarity. Marcus nodded, scanning the faces, the cameras, the chaos. He could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. What had begun as a simple seat dispute had become a flashpoint, a mirror held up to an industry and a country that too often pretended not to see. Good, Marcus said. Let them be spooked. It's about time. And with that, he stepped into the center of the storm, ready to turn one flight into a revolution. The boardroom at Pinnacle Airways headquarters had never felt so tense. 20 feet of polished mahogany reflected the faces of directors who, only hours ago, believed their biggest problem was quarterly fuel costs. Now, with every news network looping the footage from Flight 1847, their empire was under siege. Screens along the wall replayed Marcus Reed's words at the gate. What happened on Flight 1847 was racial discrimination, plain and simple, and it ends today. Not just here, not just with Pinnacle, everywhere. Stock tickers crawled across the bottom of the screen. Pinnacle shares down 14%. Skylink Technologies, Marcus's company, up 11%. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. At the head of the table, Marcus stood, not sitting like an equal, but standing like a prosecutor before a jury. Jason Miller hovered beside him with a tablet, fielding nonstop calls, his face slick with nervous sweat. Board Chairman Richard Caldwell cleared his throat. A man in his late 60s, gray hair immaculately combed. He was used to running meetings with unquestioned authority. Today his voice wavered. Mr. Reed, the events this morning have created significant reputational damage. Customers are outraged. Employees are panicked. Regulators are calling for explanations. We need to discuss damage control. Marcus leaned on the table, palms pressed flat. Damage control is the language of people who don't want to change. What happened on Flight 1847 is not an isolated PR blip. It's a symptom of a disease, and I'm here to cure it. A murmur rippled around the table. Director Linda Cho, a corporate lawyer with a reputation for caution, frowned. With respect, Marcus, grounding an aircraft via CEO override has raised serious FAA concerns. The authority to do that, Marcus cut her off. The authority to do that exists because I built it into the system. Why? Because I knew one day the need might arise to enforce accountability at the highest level. That day came today, and it won't be the last. He turned to Jason. Show them the data. Jason tapped his tablet. The screens behind Marcus filled with charts, complaints logged across the airline industry. 15,000 discrimination-related complaints filed in North America last year. Jason narrated. Less than 2% resulted in meaningful action. At Pinnacle alone, 847 complaints, 0 policy changes, 0 staff terminations, 0 accountability. The numbers hung in the air heavier than any speech. Director Martin Lewis, a retired banker, raised a trembling hand. What exactly are you proposing, Marcus? Because investors are jittery. They want assurance this company won't collapse under scandal. Marcus's voice was calm, deliberate. What I'm proposing is revolution. Effective immediately. Every discrimination complaint filed through Pinnacle will bypass middle management and land directly on my desk. Every frontline employee will undergo bias training designed not by consultants, but by civil rights leaders. And most importantly, Skylink software, the backbone of 70% of airline booking systems, will integrate bias detection and reporting across the industry. Airlines that refuse will lose access to our technology. This isn't optional. This is the new cost of doing business. The room erupted. Directors protested all at once. Unrealistic. Union backlash. Regulatory nightmare. Marcus raised a hand, silencing them. Unrealistic is pretending that what happened to me today doesn't happen to thousands of passengers every year. Unrealistic is thinking we can survive the social media firestorm without systemic change. The world saw what happened. There's no burying it. Either we lead the industry into the future, or we watch it burn down around us. Caldwell slammed a fist on the table. You're risking billions on principle. Marcus met his glare. Principle built Skylink into a global powerhouse. Principle is why investors trust me. Principle is why, even as Pinnacle stock tumbles, Skylink rises because people are hungry for leadership that means something. You want to talk billions? Watch what happens when every airline on Earth is forced to adopt our system. That's not loss. That's the largest market expansion in aviation history. Silence. The kind of silence that comes when men who thought themselves powerful realize someone else holds the real cards. At that moment, Jason's phone buzzed. He whispered urgently, Marcus, CNN wants you live tonight. Prime time. Tapper again. And White House communications team just called. The president wants a briefing tomorrow. The board stared as if Jason had just announced an alien invasion. Marcus straightened. Gentlemen or ladies, you're worried about quarterly earnings. I'm shaping the future of civil rights and transportation. Decide where you want to stand in history. He walked out, leaving the boardroom in stunned paralysis. That evening, the CNN studio lights burned hot, but Marcus sat unflinching, the image of calm resolve. Millions watched live. Jake Tapper leaned forward, voice taut with anticipation. Mr. Reed, today you didn't just challenge one passenger or one airline. You challenged an entire industry. What do you say to those who believe you overstepped, that you weaponize corporate power for personal grievance? Marcus's gaze locked on the camera. To anyone who thinks this was personal, let me be clear. What happened on Flight 1847 happens to people of color every single day. The only difference is, I had the power to stop it. Most don't. That power isn't a weapon. It's a responsibility, and I intend to use it until discrimination is no longer tolerated anywhere in this industry. Social media exploded. Reed Revolution trended alongside our Pinnacle shame. Civil rights groups issued statements of support. Airline lobbyists panicked. The next morning, outside the White House, cameras swarmed as Marcus arrived flanked by Jason and Maria Alvarez, who had insisted on covering the meeting firsthand. Protesters lined the gates, some carrying signs that read, Justice at 30,000 feet, others chanting Marcus's name. Inside the West Wing, the president shook Marcus's hand. Mr. Reed, your actions have ignited a national conversation. We're drafting the Digital Civil Rights Act to codify bias detection standards across transportation. Your expertise will be invaluable. Marcus nodded. This isn't about me. It's about ensuring no passenger, no matter their color or income, has to prove they belong in their own seat. Weeks later, Flight 1847 flew again. Same number, same route, but transformed. New screens in every cabin displayed Pinnacle's commitment. Dignity is non-negotiable. Discrimination has no seat on this aircraft. In 2A, Marcus sat quietly, watching passengers board. Across the aisle, a young Latina girl tugged her grandmother's sleeve. Abuela, what does it mean, dignity? Her grandmother smiled softly. It means people like us are welcome here. Mija, always. Marcus closed his eyes, letting the words settle. That was the victory, not the stock prices, not the headlines, not even the White House bill. The victory was a child who could fly without fear. The revolution had begun with one seat, and it was only taking off. If this story made you stop and think, even for a moment, then it's already done its job. But don't let it stop here. Have you ever witnessed discrimination? Have you ever been asked to stay quiet instead of standing up for what's right? Tell us your story in the comments. Your voice matters. And if you believe that dignity is non-negotiable, that justice should never be optional, then help this message reach further. Hit that like button right now. Subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so you never miss powerful stories like this one. Share this video with friends, with family, with that one person who needs the courage to act. Because one seat on Flight 1847 changed everything. Imagine what we can do together. The future isn't written yet, but you get to decide if it's fairer, kinder, more just. Join us. Stand with us. Because the revolution Marcus Reed started in the skies belongs to all of us.